Hey everybody, welcome to the Purpose People podcast. We have a guest arriving back, second time on the sofa with us today. It's Andy from Business on Purpose. So hi.
Good to see you all. Good to be back.
Yeah, it's good to get you back on the sofa. And obviously Bright Shirts continues.
Happy shirt. Some people put nature on their board, others put it on their shirt. What can I say?
So where'd you get it from? Shirt like that.
My wife bought me this one for Christmas.
Ah, nice.
So, yeah.
Looks really cool.
Yeah, it's nice.
So weirdly, we've been talking a little bit off camera, but obviously with nature being the theme, and we were sharing about farmers trying to be purposeful in business and trying to keep the nation, fed well. And it was a very interesting discussion around sort of like the tight margins that they have and the struggles that they go through to remain purposeful. And you certainly talked about different costs and that sort of stuff. And I just wanted to explore with you, how does a business become purposeful but ultimately still remain profitable? Is that a good little question to begin with?
That's not a bad one to just roll out across and have a little chat about that. I mean, on the farmer thing, it's really about what do we value and valuing our food security and food system. The world's gone mad, really, because all of the power has gone to the retailers and very little is making it to the farmers. And in many circumstances, it's costing farmers to produce food. Yeah. And that is utter madness. So it's where is the power in the food procurement system, really? And at the moment, it's firmly with the retailers. I think that's an interesting place because ultimately the power should be with the consumers. Yeah. And we as the consumers, we vote every time we spend £1. Yeah. And so how we vote, which retailers we buy, whether we're buying fair trade or not fair trade, whether we're buying local or not local, whether we're buying stuff that is wrapped in plastic unnecessarily or not wrapped in plastic unnecessarily, they're questions which all consumers should be looking at because that's a vote. And ultimately, we've got what we voted for. The question is, do we want to continue with that or not? Yeah, and I think that's that. Looking at that situation and scenario, I kind of like see the emergence of farm shops where people are now starting going directly to the farm shop. Now, not everyone can because obviously the costs are still quite high, but at least whatever you're paying is going to the farmer this time rather than being split 18 different ways, so to speak. Yeah. And I think there is this call to do better farming with the little red tractor and all that sort of stuff. But I just think for me, when I've been watching Clarkson's farm, I'm not saying he's the authority on farming, but it's just the young guy bringing some education to say, look, we've been doing this for hundreds of years and we're finding it incredibly difficult, to make this happen and make it a viable thing in the fact selling the thing that we all need, which is food. Yeah. I'm a big fan of spreadsheets, and I just like to see a spreadsheet with costs and margins and transparency ultimately. And I think if people are more transparent with that value chain, consumers can make a decision as to what they want to do. But at the moment, it's just, you see an item for £5 and you're not quite sure as a consumer where the value is in that £5 cost. And if we were more educated and it was more transparent as to what small slice the farmers were getting out of that, I think we as consumers would be able to make more informed choices. So I think some of it is just transparency and education. Now, you obviously represent BCorp as an organisation and, helping people get B Corps and getting over the line. In that smorgasbord of various different companies that you work with, you must have a few foodies in there somewhere along the line. Is there some stuff that you've seen that they do a little bit differently to sort of like try and be a bit more purposeful and try and help educate people? Yeah, for sure. So, most B Corp food and drink organisations are very mindful in terms of where their products are sourced from originally. You've got a number of organisations, Marshfield Farm, for example, when you look at what they're doing in terms of trying to be much more regenerative and caring a lot more about the environment, what they've been doing is exemplary in many ways. You also see then a lot of collaborations that are going on between B Corp food and drink companies. So True Start Coffee are now working with Marshfield Farm in producing a coffee flavoured ice cream, and that's been a great collaboration for both.
Yeah, that's great.
So, there's some real B Corp stuff out there.
But that's the power of community, isn't it? It's like us getting together and working to make the world a better place, but not recognising we're not an island and we've got to work together to make it happen. And I think for me, that's been the power of B Corp, and understand it, going through the process, being a B Corp ourselves, is, that reminder that there is a community that are all looking to do good. Business isn't always about making money. It's not all about making money. There is other things to consider as well.
I think what's interesting is an organisation like Tony's Chocolate Only. They have put out a what is a good procurement process to go through.
Yeah,
that's not just their procurement process. They've put it out into public domain to say other chocolate makers can adopt some of these principles. Maybe not all of them, but some of them. And so what I like about what Tony's are doing is they are being an exemplar and a catalyst within their industry to try and raise the tide on all of their industry. And I think that's a lesson which we can learn. There is a thriving B Corp Beauty Coalition. Yeah. There's some built environment groups. There's some finance groups. We're looking at doing more with food and drink, fashion and textile, recruitment, digital creatives. These verticals, I think, are really important, because when you get into a room with people who understand your world and talk your language, that's when you can really move things around and just make changes and suggestions and insights and collaborations that can really make a difference, not just with your business, but influencing a whole industry. And that's my hope, really, is where B Corps can play, is being that catalyst in that exemplar within their industry. Whether lots more within their industry become B Corps, that would be a great thing.
Yeah, of course.
But if not, then at least influencing that industry to do better, to be a better business, to be more purposeful, to take into account what the repercussions of doing business are with their suppliers, with their people, with the planet.
Yeah.
That is a brilliant thing to try and lean into.
No, it is, and I think what we experienced as a team was the area of, in our industry, we've got a pretty bad reputation of working crazy long hours to mega short deadlines. So people working 18 hours, 19 hours a day, or people working through the night to be able to achieve an impossible deadline because the money's good, let's say, and me was looking at that and saying, well, how do I disrupt the industry, if you like? And that 4-day work week came as a result of that, which is one of the tenets of B Corp, which is about people, right? So I remember going into the office and telling everyone, we're going to do the 4-day work week. And we do it slightly differently, so it's not, and we discussed it at length, but we feel this is the best sweet spot for us, where we do 4 days, Friday off, 4 days, R&D day. That's how we work.
Yeah.
And it gives people room and space. So if something does spill over, they sometimes use the R&D day and then use that time another time of the week or the month. But I remember being fought on it, like, we can't do it. We're never going to get our work done. It's busy enough as it is. And what it forced us to do, which is part of the process that B Corp do, is look at our process. Are we being efficient with the time that we have? Are we doing it the very best way, rather than are we doing it because we've always done it? And I think going through the B Corp questionnaire and the B Corp process enabled me to, on top of what I was looking at with 4-day work week to benefit my staff, it led us to go through all these different things to say, are we still doing it? And we've just finished the audit again and sent over. So our second recertification. So that's gone over. And so we've been through that process, but it's a good thing because Nathan, who was heavily involved in the first time, now it's James, but James is asking different questions to what Nathan did. And it's nice to see him sort of like learn why we do things the way that we do. And I think that's the point of it, is that sometimes we want to do good things to our staff, but we don't necessarily have the how to make it happen, which is why someone like yourself is great in terms of helping people say, if this is your heart, or you're already doing it, but you just need to have these things to demonstrate it to somebody else that you are doing it, was invaluable.
Yeah, that is definitely the value of the framework.
Yeah.
It's essentially it's like a health checkup, isn't it? You know, and
Yeah.
are you as healthy as you could be or as you want to be? And by just going through all of those checks, a bit of an MOT really,
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
you find out, you know, there's a few fails or could do better, and adjustments that you need to make in your business. And so I think it's an eminently healthy thing to, you know, perhaps once a year, just go through the processes, ask yourself those questions, recalibrate some things, produce a new impact report. There's the transparency thing, so that people can see what you're doing each year and you're being transparent and authentic about that. I think that there's nothing but healthy outcomes as a result of taking that approach.
So it's an interesting one because, you know, when we first got the B Corp, we had an office and a lot of our staff lived quite near to us. And then we all started moving away out of the city through the pandemic and out the other side. And then, you know, in the lead up to going through the recertification, what had changed is we're now completely remote as a team. And, you know, so originally it was like we got an office and we're waiting around in traffic and trying to drive into Bristol, but our business has changed massively. So to go through that audit a second time, it's almost like a different organisation, was good. I think it's a great way of, you know, assessing yourself because, you know, we don't often look back. We're always looking forward to a better tomorrow. And this forces us to go back a little bit and say, this is how far you travel. So when we've done the process, I go, yeah, we've come a long way since then, I think.
Yeah, and I think those annual checkups, those annual impact reports are great ways of tracking back through, almost like journaling, really, in terms of where we've been, where we've come from, and where we want to go to. So I think those annual impact reports and checkups are really valuable to any business.
So tell us a little bit about, because obviously, you know, you head up Purpose Fest as well. Tell us a little bit about Purpose Fest and why you started that.
Well, Purpose Fest is really manifested out of a B local. So there's currently about 18 B locals around the country, and I'm co-chair of the Bristol and Bath B local. There's about 150 BCorps locally within Bristol and Bath. So every March is BCorp month, a little bit like Fair Trade Fortnight.
Yeah.
So during BCorp month, we wanted to get all of the team together and celebrate BCorp month, share some exemplars, encourage people, inspire people. So in 2023, we ran our first Purpose Fest, and that was relatively successful. We had 220 people. Then in 2024, that went up to 480, and this year it was in similar range. So it's just gotten bigger. At these conferences, I mean, you've been to plenty of conferences, you know, you hear the speakers talk and so on and so forth, but 4 weeks later, 8 weeks later, you can't necessarily remember an awful lot of what was actually spoken about at any one given content session. But what we feel is really important is that people leave those Purpose Fest sessions feeling like they are part of something bigger than themselves.
Yeah.
Finding that they are surrounded by other purpose-aligned, values-aligned individuals and businesses, so that they don't get overwhelmed by some of the negative press and media that is out there that says, you know, we're turning the clocks back on our diversity and inclusion, and, you know, all of our carbon footprinting metrics, etc. That's out the window. You know, it's you know, drill for more oil, baby, regardless of any cost. That is not what the majority feel. And it's important to be amongst other people who have got that common mindset with you, that we can encourage and support and inspire one another to continue to be better. And in those difficult times, it's in the difficult times that your purpose really rises to the surface.
Yeah, and I think that for me, that's what's been quite interesting, is that the extremes, it's like, you know, we go one way and then we go the other way just to provoke a reaction. But it doesn't matter what you say, sticking loads of plastic in an ocean is not a good thing. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, what about stewardship? What about taking care of the countryside? You know, I live in the country now, so I'm a lot more aware of stuff. You know, I think it's, you know, back in the day when it was a case of you go to the supermarket and you get loads of food and you get meat every day and you don't even think about it. It's just vacuum packed and then you're done, right? Whereas now you're in the country, you actually see what you're going to eat. you know, and you think a little bit differently about life, you know, and
Yeah.
so, well, do we need to eat so much, and do we need to operate this way, and you know, and then you see the farmers working through the night on crazy hours or whatever else. So all of a sudden it's like it's okay to have this black and white picture of stuff, but actually let's think about what's happening in real time here. You know, farmers are struggling to get crops. If there's no rain, crops die. That then affects their cash flow. That affects the mental health of farmers. Then farmers end up, you know, leaving the earth early, so to speak, and now you've got a problem with your supply chain. And it's like, rather than work together, it's almost like polarizing of opinions to see who's right and who's wrong. But in the middle, life still goes on, right? We've still got to eat food. We've still got to operate as humans, while everyone's saying, you're this, you're that, you're that. And I think what BCorp does is at least bring people together and say, no, we can make a difference. We can be a third voice, if that makes sense. We're not really, it's like, how do we just keep the generations that are emerging to be more responsible in life? I mean, that's ultimately what it's about.
Yeah, you're right. And I think, you know, by getting those groups of organizations together that are purpose aligned and values aligned, they can actually look collectively at their supply chain and look at things like, you know, seasonal food, you know, rather than shipping in stuff that is out of season in the UK. You know, we can lean into and consume more of the stuff that is being seasonal. I mean, one of the things that I think we could do better at as a country is just analysing what food goes to waste before it even makes it onto the supermarket shelves.
Yeah.
You know, and we don't want to be producing 20% of our food that never actually makes it even to a supermarket shelf, because there's overproduction in some areas because we've not managed the demands properly, and often that is due to seasonal stuff. So I think, again, we need to educate ourselves as consumers.
It's really good. I've never heard that. Like, you know, because we just assume I'm hungry and I want to buy some food, and I just buy what I want and I eat at any time of the year. I didn't even consider a season to food. We don't now, because it's so readily available, isn't it?
For sure. But, you know, when we go and buy, we look at where that food is coming from. And, you know, we are currently buying strawberries from Gloucestershire, not strawberries from Spain.
Yes.
You know, and that is a great thing. But in a few months' time, the strawberries from Gloucestershire and cheddar will no longer be available. In which case, do we stop eating strawberries for a few months and then enjoy them again next year? You know, my life is not dependent on eating strawberries every day of the week. So I think just a little bit of education around that food system would help us, you know, buy in a more appropriate way according to what seasonal food was available.
But that goes back to the disconnect between the consumer and farming, and then the convenience of supermarkets, because we just have this expectation that if I want it, I can buy it, and if it's not there, it's the supermarket's problem, you know. And I think just that education that no, at certain times we don't grow this stuff, so we have to ship it in, and in shipping it in, there's all these other things to consider that we don't talk about. So I like that. If I've got one thing out of this podcast today, I'm going to start looking, where does my food come from? Because it's about being intelligent, isn't it? It's being smart and saying, well, actually, let's eat seasonally. You know, your salads, your this, that, and the other, you eat then, and then in the winter it's more, you know, all the other stuff like potatoes and whatever else. So it's a really cool thing. I'm like chewing over that.
Yeah,
nice. I like that. So Purpose Fest also has grown, and have you given any thought to taking it beyond the borders of Bristol? You look at me like, oh my gosh, don't ask me that question.
Yeah, no, we've definitely thought about that, and the answer is thanks, but no thanks. You know, again, what we want to do with BCorp is we want to have a template as to what a good business looks like.
Yeah.
How we can run a good business.
Yeah.
With Purpose Fest, it is an event that gets local, values-aligned businesses together. And Purpose Fest was born, to a large extent, out of Goodfest, which was an event that was run in Cornwall.
Right, okay.
Matt Hawkins at Leap, a certified BCorp, ran events down in Cornwall called Goodfest. I attended a few of those and was inspired by those to do something more local in the Bristol and Bath area.
Nice.
And so it's really taking those exemplars of how to deliver a good event, a purposeful event, a purpose-led event, and do that. And, we talk to other B locals from around the country. We're getting together as co-chairs of all the B locals. In just a few weeks' time, we're coming together and sharing best practice. And I'm sure there will be one or two discussions around Purpose Fest and what we've learned, what we would do differently, what we could do better, and so on and so forth. So it's really not, I've got this asset called Purpose Fest.
Yeah.
What can we do to expand it? We want to give away that good practice. We want to give away those ideas and just have that shared around. And that's exactly what we want to do with BCorp. We want to give that knowledge away and just encourage other businesses to do business in a more purposeful way.
So with that said, when we talk about going worldwide now, how many B Corps are there worldwide now?
Almost 10,000, just north of 9,800.
Right, okay.
Yeah, 2,500 heading up towards 3,000 in the UK. Will probably be at 3,000 early 2026.
Right. So when you say, so let's say with 3,000 in the UK, which is quite high if you look at the ratio compared to the number of B Corps, how many of them are in the US, would you say, percentage-wise, not numbers?
Yeah, well, so the UK is just about to overtake the US in terms of numbers.
Wow.
Yeah. So I would think by this time next year, there will be more B Corps in the UK than there is in the US.
Wow. Because obviously when we talk about best practice, we talk about, being healthier and stuff. Obviously, we started off talking about food, but America's quite well documented in terms of the quality of its food and the way that it operates. So I'm quite interested to see, now there's been a change in government, is that accelerating? Is that slowing down? Is a trend, so to speak. But if you argue if the United Kingdom go beyond America, you'd argue that it's slowing down, if anything.
Yeah, although I think there's been some interesting things. So with some of the rollback around D&I and the environmental metrics that we've recently seen in the States, that has actually polarized people. And those that are using business as a force for good, instead of rolling back on those things, they've leaned in even further. Yeah. So there's two big box shifters in the US. One is Costco, who we know. Yeah. And Costco. the other one is Target. Now Target, relatively soon after the US elections and Mr. Trump coming to power, they rolled back in line with what their president was saying. Yeah. Costco, on the other hand, said, that's not us. We're leaning into it. Right. Okay. And what's been interesting is Costco has seen the number of sign-ups of organizations converting from Target across to Costco has gone up massively. So with that in mind then, what about the bigger guns like Apple? Have Apple ever thought about becoming a B Corp, do you know? Or is that something that they just won't do? Because you would think someone like as big as that became a B Corp, it really popped. Well, you're getting into the zone of, your large corporates and your shareholders and their values alignment. So Apple will make a lot of big claims about their environmental credentials and how they treat their employees. Yeah. The proof of the pudding is in the eating in terms of, is that still predominantly a financially driven business or a purpose-driven business? Now, I've not done a whole load of due diligence on Apple, but it's still significantly financially driven, 100%. Not purpose-driven. And you could say that is the same with loads of other brands, that they are all significantly financially driven. Now, don't get me wrong. B Corp is really pro-profit. 100%. No mission, no margin, no mission. You can't be good if you're not making money. No. But it's this question of balance and balancing profit with purpose. I think that's where we need to see things coming into line a lot more than they currently are. Yeah, and I think that for me is the big shift, isn't it? Because when you've got a business that's been running 30, 40 years and then it's handed over to the next generation where you've got a significant amount of shareholders, the founder might have passed on or left, so to speak, then obviously values change. And so you look at an organisation like Apple that is run by a money man, which is
Mr. Cook, and the innovation guy left, Johnny Ive.
Yeah.
And so you know straight away that the whole thing is about money and maximizing margin. But if you're seeing that trend of businesses like Costco now going back the other way, you go, well, hang on a second. Is there at some point where those shareholders get older, they retire, and a new generation come through, which gives you hope that things may change for the better?
I think that those changes will happen, but it's in a generation's time. It's in 20 years' time. And I think, there is an incumbency on us now to try and accelerate that so that we're not waiting for 20 years.
Yeah.
We need to be trying to actually be exemplars and show that purpose and profit can coexist quite happily. And in many respects, purposeful businesses, purpose-led businesses are out trading their non-purpose-led competitors.
Yeah.
There's plenty of reports and studies that are showing that now. And ultimately, when difficult decisions are needing to be met, thinking about your core purpose and what you're on this planet for, the fundamental, why am I here? It's not just about to make a load of money, big house, big car. There are lots of other things that are far more important. And yes, the Gen Zs and the millennials are more that way inclined. And when you look at the amount of stats that people are looking at, it's 70-80% care about this stuff.
Yeah.
And 70-80% will put their money where their mouth is.
Yeah.
And therefore, the corporates of this world will follow the money, and the money will be where the demand is from conscious-led consumers.
Yeah.
So I think that they are just going to follow the money, but it's the consumers ultimately that we want to try and educate and inspire and encourage to lean into making purposeful purchasing decisions.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely like working as a business that is in brand marketing, and we're bringing purpose into their business, and they're either lost sight of it or they're realigning with it. Because we're in a situation where we look at businesses that have been trading for maybe 10, 15 years, where the founders are looking to exit. They're probably older, and they're handed over to the next generation. And they're not until the point that we're engaged with them, are they asking the questions, why did the business start in the first place? And what you find is often it was started with the right heart, the right vision, the right mission to make an impact, make a difference. But like Mr. Large Corporate called Apple, it becomes about the bottom line. And I think the key thing there is to say, well, can we have a decent bottom line, but can we go back to the impact, please? And I think those are the questions that are being asked right now. So whether you are a new money crypto type company that's using thousands upon thousands of servers, or whether you are a food company, people are asking those deeper questions. Can we have both, rather than it's one or the other? And I think that's ultimately, when you talk about political, it's almost like an either or. You can't have both. And I think the generation coming through is saying, yes, you can. We just got to figure it out. Yeah.
It is, and it's down to choices and decisions at the end of the day. I heard a fascinating fact at Blue Earth Summit last year, and it was crypto as an industry is now responsible for a bigger carbon footprint than Argentina as a whole country.
Sure, wow.
It's just a cracker, when you put it in those kinds of comparable terms. That enables me as an individual to really get a grip on the impact that crypto is having environmentally on the planet.
And then shifting to AI.
Well, that's probably outstripping crypto now.
Absolutely. And that's the point. It all looks great from your screen, but you're not asking the impact.
You're not seeing what's happening behind the scenes.
No. And I think there is impact even to the industries. They're like, well, we don't need creatives anymore. We just type in, I need a cat on a bike, please.
Yeah. And that leans back into what we were saying. I want a strawberry.
Yeah.
But then is it a local strawberry with very few carbon footprint miles attached to it, or is it being shipped? Most of our lettuce that we buy and consume in the UK comes from abroad. Something as simple as lettuce.
Yeah.
But you just go to the supermarket, you buy your lettuce.
Yeah, you do.
Don't give it a second thought.
No.
You click on Copilot, you don't give it a second thought.
No.
Off you go. And it's these hidden things, and I think therefore transparency would be a great thing, and hopefully tech will help us as consumers to be more educated purchasers.
I think that's the key thing. I mean, I know there was a lot of how do you put it, publicity with the areas of pensions. We'd get a pension and you put your money in and then they invest it. And the thing is, do you want low risk, medium risk, high risk? And then I'll visit it when I'm 60, 65. You never thought about it. And then it was like, well, do you know that your pension's being used in the oil business or for arms? And you're like, what?
For sure.
And so there was this big push to clean that up. But I think likewise what you're saying now with like consumer goods is to, as a responsible citizen, is to begin to ask those deeper questions, even in the food that you're buying. If you're inputting it, if you can buy it from Gloucester, great. But if you're inputting it from Spain because you want strawberries in December, maybe not have the strawberries in December. So it's asking those bigger questions. There's a learning that I've got out today is, I'm going to be like, where's this from? It's going to be an interesting exercise because then you start to realise how much do we produce in the UK?
And on AI, there's a load of people almost using AI now as a default, where you could just simply search. You don't have to use AI. You could simply search. Yeah. But even then, when you simply search, you can choose to search on Google.
Yeah.
You can choose to search on Ecosia. And Ecosia is a much more carbon-friendly search engine. Yeah. So even just let me do a search, as opposed to AI, but let me do a search. As a consumer, you can make a choice as to where you do most of your searching, and therefore the environmental impact that those searches had. They're simple things. A search is a search, but where you do that search, where you buy that strawberry, whether you're going to do a search or an AI, all of these things have an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would you say to a business then that, because often that's an objection, I can't afford to be more purposeful, because the minute they're thinking it's a negative straight away, what would you say to a business that has been, maybe their team has come to them and said, have you thought about going B Corp? And then the kickback's been, oh, we can't afford to go down that route. We're trying to stay alive. What would you say to that business? Because there might be someone listening on here that's heard B Corp bandied around, they've heard a lot of people talk about it, but probably haven't had the time to even research it, but think it's an expense we could do without. Yeah. What would you say to them? I
might say I've not got time to go to the doctor, but then when you drop down and have a heart attack, guess what?
Yeah.
Everything changes.
Yeah.
And I think, people that just say, I can't afford to be purposeful or I can't afford to be a B Corp, the finances don't add up. I'd just say, have a look, do some investigating.
Yeah.
The facts that you are perceiving in your head, are they true?
Yeah.
Because there's lots of studies out there now that are showing that purposeful businesses are actually outstripping in terms of growth non-purposeful ones, and that is because they're retaining their people.
Yeah. 100%.
So when your people come to you and say, have you considered about being a B Corp? Just simply saying we can't afford to do that at the moment, that's got consequences, because the people that are coming to you and talking to you about that might choose to leave your business and go to another business that is a B Corp. That's got cost attached to you.
100%.
It might not be up front, but there is cost in recruitment. There's cost in PR disasters, that can suddenly come up. There's loads of hidden costs to a business. And I think all we would say with going through the B Corp framework is it's like this checkup. It's like an MOT. It's like a health check. Just have a look at it. Don't just dismiss it and say, that's not for us.
Yeah.
Get involved. Talk to others in the community. Talk to your peers. So if a creative agency has got that of an opinion, go and talk to another creative agency and say, what has been the consequence of being a B Corp for you? And if you're then able to listen and have that conversation, you might well find that there are fiscal benefits to doing that. I mean, one of the interesting things that I'm involved with at the moment is bottom line, hard-nosed fiscal benefits. Companies that have got good ESG creds, there are accelerators in terms of their valuation under EBITDA and therefore what your company is worth.
Right.
That if you're scoring well on your ESG, your multiplying factors on your EBITDA valuation mean that your business is worth more. So if you were trying to sell your business, selling it with good ESG creds is going to make your business more valuable to you. On the flip side as well, access to finance. You can now get more cost-effective access to finance if you've got good ESG creds and purpose-led values than you can if you're not. You will get a better rate, effectively, on your loan than you otherwise would not have.
Yeah.
It's a marketplace where, a lot of people are just not really plugged in to see where those benefits are. And so when people say, I can't afford it, it's great to have a conversation with them and let them know that there are some of these things out there. We are currently working with an organisation who are impact investors.
Okay.
So they've got, a big loan pot. By big, I'm talking $16 billion big, so a decent size. They are looking to invest that money with impact-driven businesses.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Those impact-driven businesses will be invested in as a match fund between $1 million and $10 million.
Yeah.
That's what they're looking to match. It will go in as a 2% loan. So 2% is quite good cost-effective access to money. But the impact that those investors are wanting to see out the other end, they're wanting those aligned to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. And if that business delivers against an SDG, that loan is forgiven 20%.
Wow.
Do the maths.
Yeah.
You deliver against 5 SDGs, and that $2 million match fund loan gets forgiven.
Yeah.
That is where purpose can take you. So even if people are hard-nosed wanting to look at the numbers, I think that there is good reason fiscally, forget is it the right thing or not, but fiscally, there is economics out there now that are saying this is not only the right thing to do, but it's the economically advantageous and smart thing to do.
Yeah, so interesting you say that because, two things. Part of our purpose playbook is we come up with recommendations, and I think 9 times out of 10, maybe 9.9 times out of 10, we always recommend BCorp, and your name is in our recommendations, and then we suggest they get in touch. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but we always ask them to do that. And certainly some of our clients that we started working with have become B Corps on the journey. The Sustainable Development Goals, for people that are probably not aware of it, there's 17 of them, and they, for me, are great, almost like a great step into this world. And when we were educating a company, we were brought into a plastics company. I won't name who they are, but they are a local company. And they obviously, as a plastics company, what are you doing about the ocean? That's obviously the big question. And they're doing a lot, in terms of like, if you see a black plastic microwavable meal, that black plastic you can't recycle. But if you see like the creamy green olive type ones, they're recycled and can be recycled again and again. So they basically do the latter. And there's a lot of education around that, and a lot of their suppliers, they talk to about it or whatever. But when we were tasked with rebuilding their deck, their slide deck that they present as a credentials presentation, and we told them, you heard about the Sustainable Development Goals? And I'm like, no. So we worked with them, and we worked out that there were five that they wanted to implement, of which 3 they were already doing, and 2 were on their radar, but it didn't know it was framed as a Sustainable Development Goal. So they put them into the keynote presentation with some facts to back up that they're doing this work. Anyway, long story short, the company came in to review their contract they've been working with for 10 years. And I think they were signing short-term deals, and they got a 5-year deal just because of the Sustainable Development Goals. And they said of the 5 that they presented, 3 of them were the company that went to see them's values and their SDGs, and that's why they signed up with them. So bottom line is, it kept them another 5 years with that 10-year contract because they communicated. So it's not a case of sometimes not even having to do it or having to learn to do it. Sometimes you're already doing it, but you just don't know how to communicate it. And it's like something like yourself, when you come in and you go down the B Corp journey and stuff, you can explain some of this stuff that you're already doing it. You're already trying to be good, but you're not communicating that to the people you can serve. And if you do it well, as you said, there are financial benefits, does it? But for me, that was the biggest thing, or biggest win from educating someone on a sustainable development goal. To have an impact within 2 weeks and them doing a presentation was incredible.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the powerful things with frameworks is you said that, 3 of those SDGs aligned with the company they were doing business with, is when you've got frameworks like that, you can actually talk a language that says, is this business aligned to us or is it not aligned to us?
Yeah.
And if you're not B Corp certified, or if you're not able to produce a report around the SDGs, companies have then got to do an awful lot more due diligence to work out, are we aligned or are we not aligned? Going into a call and saying we're a B Corp, that immediately sets a scene in terms of we are values aligned, we are purpose aligned, and people want to do business with purpose aligned organisations, definitely.
So where would you say has been sort of like, you've been, 5 years now in this?
Yeah, just coming up for 5 years.
5 years. Look at that. Yeah. Remembers that conversation in the coffee shop.
Yeah.
What's the biggest shift you've seen in 5 years with, the whole business on purpose thing? Well, obviously you're in it a lot. You surround it. You've obviously been on the other side of the fence in the corporate world. What's the biggest shifts you've seen collectively in 5 years?
I think the community growing, and therefore the community working together, and therefore the collective impact that community can have. I mean, the numbers of B Corps in the UK are doubling about every 18 months. So, wow. By any means, that is considerable growth.
Yeah.
What is interesting for me is that let's not rest on our laurels, because, doubling every 18 months is not really going to get us to where we need to get to quick enough.
Yeah.
We need, an even greater growth trajectory on that. So what B Corps are hoping to do is be exemplars to other businesses, whether they become B Corp or not, but helping them to go on a journey that helps them just initially take an initial look at themselves and look at what they're doing. Celebrate the wins. That company was already doing 3 things, great. And then look at maybe another couple of things that they could do to make themselves even better.
Yeah, 100%.
And that really is where I think the journey and the trajectory is. There's currently in the UK 5 million businesses.
Yeah.
The tipping point, as per Malcolm Gladwell, is about 3%.
Yeah.
Well, that's 150,000 businesses out of 5 million. There's currently 2.5, nearly 3,000 businesses.
So there's a lot of work.
So we have got a lot of work to do to get to even 3%.
Yeah.
But that excites me, because it shows me that there are a whole load of businesses out there with not an awful lot of extra effort or extra work.
Yeah.
Could actually say we have benchmarked ourselves and we've identified a few areas where we could improve, and we are going to be part of that 3%.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not difficult. We're not asking, the devil incarnate to suddenly overnight become Angel Gabriel. What we're talking about is good businesses becoming better.
Yeah.
Bad businesses becoming less bad, but all moving towards that direction of becoming a better, fitter, stronger, healthier business.
Yeah, and I think that's the key thing, isn't it? It's about progress, not perfection. So if we're making progress, and that's part of the scoring, even if your score's the same when you recertify, to get that, because so much has changed, for example, pat on the back anyway, I think for me it's just a case of people not only winning it, but then recertifying and then going again, and then going again, and then going again, and keeping those retention rates. So as much as we're chasing new people coming on as a B Corp, there's not a whole load of them going, oh, I'm going to go and do something else then. Because I think the framework is a great way of keeping you accountable without someone knocking on your front door, so to speak. It's more, I'm doing this because it's a good thing to do. It's not, I'm doing it because I want to, get tax breaks or anything like that. It's just, first of all, let's just start doing it's a good thing to do. And that's why I like the Sustainable Development Goals as a model, because depends on your political, or they're trying to control everything or whatever. No, but if you actually read them, they're good things.
Yeah.
If you actually read them, it's like, why wouldn't you want to do some of the stuff like look at good health and education and well-being? Why wouldn't you want to do that?
I mean, it's the closest thing we've got to a global strategy of not just surviving, but thriving.
Yeah.
If the world was able to adhere to the UN SDGs as a planet, we would thrive.
Yeah.
At the moment, for many people, they are barely surviving.
Yeah.
And in terms of getting better, it's an interesting thing. So, we want to get better. The BCorp framework, as we are currently having it at the moment, version 6, has recently been updated because B-Lab themselves want to keep on improving. They want to keep raising the bar. So the new standards were published in April 2025, and they will come into effect in January 2026. So we've got plenty of time to get ready for those.
Yeah.
But when you become a new B Corp in 2026, or you recertify in 2026, not only will you recertify, but you will also need to submit a 3-year plan and a 5-year improvement plan.
Right, okay.
So that is again, it's kind of getting you to step up more and lean into it more. I've just recertified, I've recertified, and I've actually published a plan as to how we're going to improve over the next 3 or 5 years' time. And when you recertify 3 years after that, the first thing they're going to do is say, well, what did you say you were going to improve on, and how have you performed against that?
Yeah.
That is becoming a much more robust and holding you to account framework, which is going to make you a better, fitter, stronger, healthier business. That is what we need, more so than any other time in history.
Yeah.
We need businesses to step up. We need businesses to do the right thing. We need them to be purposeful and make a profit.
Yeah.
And those two things are not divided. They are inextricably linked. You can do both. And I think that is the strong message that we want to try and communicate. But the framework itself is becoming stronger, and I'm a huge fan of doing better. Yeah.
So, I mean, we've talked a lot about, obviously SMEs emergent, and we've touched on like large corporates or whatever. What are the largest businesses now that have become B Corp over the last 5 years, that you're aware of now?
I mean, a big one would be Coutts. They are a big outfit, and they, to a certain extent, were driven by their consumers, who are ultimately ultra high net worth individuals. And they're saying, we don't want to invest our money with Coutts if Coutts are then investing it in investments that we're not comfortable with. And Coutts therefore went through the B Corp framework and used it to actually start to pivot a little bit in terms of looking at where their investments were. Yeah. Because ultimately they want to retain those ultra high net worth individuals as clients and attract more. And so going through the B Corp framework, not just in terms of how they run their business, but how they run their portfolio, is really interesting. We touched earlier on the green pension thing. That is just an absolute game changer in terms of, if you could do one simple thing today, make sure your pension is a green pension. That is an absolute game changer. You could put solar panels on your house, change to an electric vehicle, become a superb recycler, go vegan. Quite a big package of change. Yeah. But compared to changing your pension, that is 19 times more effective than all of those other things combined. Yeah. So I cannot emphasize how much difference getting to grips with your pensions and making sure that your pensions are invested in a positive investment portfolio. That is an absolute game changer.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So I think for me, B Corp has been a great framework we talked about. And so if people, where would they find, if they've never heard of it, or what would the process be for them?
Well, anyone can log on and have a look at the framework. It's under beimpactassessment.net. So just type in, don't use AI to find it, just put it straight into your search engine, beimpactassessment.net. So you can go in, have a look at that. It's a free to use toolkit.
Yeah.
Is it simple? No. It's not simple. And that is why people like me exist, to help walk people through and coach people through it. But it's not something that is overly costly to do that, to go through that program. We run for smaller businesses and micro businesses, cohorts. So, we've run almost 50 cohorts now in the last 5 years. We've helped north of 500 businesses go through this framework. So it is doable. You need to allocate 2 hours a week for 3 or 4 months to actually go through the framework, assess where you are, make a decision on whether you're going to actually submit for B Corp certification, and then gather your evidence. So 2 hours a week for something that matters to you, for something that is, in keeping with your values and your purpose, 2 hours a week is something that most companies can happily do.
Lastly, is there any companies on your radar that you'd love to become a B Corp, that you go, one day I want to work with those guys? Have you got any company that you're thinking of that I'd love to work with these guys?
Yeah, the bad ones, literally.
Yeah.
Because, I've worked with 500 businesses.
Yeah.
They have all been great businesses. Creation is an obvious example of that. Yeah. Already a good business, went through B Corp, became a better business.
Yeah.
But the amount of impact that you're having, that might have moved you on a score out of 100 from a 90 to a 95.
Yeah.
Because you were already quite good at 90.
Yeah.
I'm interested in working with companies that you can move from a 10 to a 60.
Yeah. That's
because that is where impact is to be had.
Yeah.
And what I'm hopeful about the new B Corp framework is that even businesses that are not going to go through B Corp can use it as a framework and identify where they are performing poorly from a purpose perspective, and look to try and improve that, whether that's on a people perspective or a planet perspective. So we need to, as a community, look at our linguistics, look at our judgment of others, and not say, they're a bad company, they're a bad corporate, I'm not working with them. We can't do that.
No.
We need to come alongside those businesses and encourage them and inspire them and cheer them on to do something better than what we're doing. So I'm excited. It might be oxymoronic, but I'm excited to how we can work with bad businesses, or traditionally what we would consider to be bad businesses, and encourage them to be a bit better. At Change Now last year, Clover Hogan, who is quite a well-known activist, said, what the world doesn't need is 100 perfect activists. What the world really needs is millions of imperfect activists. And I'm really interested in the 5 million businesses in the UK, how we can encourage 5 million to be better, not 2,000 or 3,000 to be the amazing, savior to the world. I'm interested in what we can do to actually catalyze all 5 million to become better, because only when we're doing that are we really going to address some of the big changes that we need to see in society and across the world.
Yeah, because I'm seeing, a lot of businesses going from one generation to the next. There's a lot of management buyouts, people that have been in business for many years retiring, and so their businesses are being handed over, so to speak, in one way, shape or form. And succession is difficult the best of times, but if you want to bring purpose into a succession type business, B Corp is a great framework to do that with. Because I think I was talking to someone before about it and said, the switch over from one generation to the next, how easy is it? And the business consultant said it's difficult. Like, one of the most difficult things you'll ever do is a succession plan. And because they have a certain values, why the company started in its first place, they made decisions differently. And now you've got someone else coming in with a completely different set of values, completely different education thing, and want to take it in a different direction. They've got to let go, because don't change. You can change everything, but don't change anything. And then that person's coming in and going, well, how am I going to do this? And they're making it up as they go along. Whereas B Corp enables them to make that change with the framework that they actually have. And I think there's loads of legacy businesses out there now that need someone like B Corp to help them.
And I think that framework is so healthy because part of the framework encourages you to engage with and have a dialogue with a whole range of stakeholders.
Yeah.
So your stakeholders are your staff.
Yeah.
Do you want to consider moving from an owner-owned business or a shareholder-owned business across to more of an employee ownership type model? Those are conversations that you can look at that will enable that owner to exit the business with an asset, with some cash, but do it in a way that actually is mindful of the employees who are now taking on the mantle of running that business in a purposeful way. And that's something that is really powerful. So having those conversations, going through the BCorp framework, that's one of the areas of conversation that you'll go through. And what a great way. You're being open and transparent. You're also being open and transparent with your suppliers, with your customers. You're taking these people's views into account. Do you want to take the views into account of your customers? Well, as a business, woe betide if you don't do that. Of course you want to do that.
You see, what I'm interested in is this. The businesses that have been running for 100 years, 100 years, 150-year type businesses, where somehow they've managed to communicate that mission, that vision over a long period of time. And I think what you'll find is when someone exits a business, they sell a business, they get out of it, and then everything changes, including the vision or whatever. But if the vision was right in the first place, is then how do you take that beyond the 25 years, one generation and the next generation? And for me, that's where I'm starting to think now is generational building. We used to do it, and we don't do it so much now. I think Boots, Boots, the company Boots, I think Boots have still got the year they were formed. I think it's 1885 underneath their logo as a reminder. We've been around quite a while, and they've gone through some tough times and some good times, but somehow they still keep going. And it's like, how do we go acquire companies but continue in the vision and the mission and why they started? I think BCorp was a great vehicle. Even if the owner or founder decides to move on, it keeps them aligned to then someone that might have the propensity to have from 100 organization to 1,000 organizations. Someone who works with one country can work with 15 countries, but the vision remains the same. And that's what I'm interested in. And that's why I think something like BCorp is a good way to make that happen.
And it's a great way for you to go through a framework to help you identify what is your core purpose.
100%.
And then all other decisions emanate from that purpose. And I think purpose is a safe place and a sound place from which to make decisions. And purpose, there's a phrase, purpose is the well that never runs dry. And I think that is something that you can always lean back into your purpose, whether you're in, the tight years or the years where you've got, plenty. Leaning into purpose to embed your decision making from a place of purpose is a great place to start. And that is why we at Business on Purpose are thriving and are doing so well, is because more businesses are thinking about purpose.
So that said, I guess the website to get in touch with you is Business on Purpose.
businessonpurpose.uk.
Awesome. But yeah, Andy, people reach out to you, LinkedIn, through the website. Are they the best places to get hold of you?
For sure.
Cool. And is there anything else you want to plug before you finish for today?
For people that are thinking about, being better, not so much being a B Corp, but just wanting their business to be better, wanting to take their business to the next level. The B Corp framework, don't think it is only for the superheroes that are out there, although all the B Corps that I've seen are superheroes to a large extent. They've been brave, they've been courageous. But B Corp, the framework, is for any business to actually take a look at and just have that self-reflective mirror to see where are we doing well, let's celebrate, and where can we do better, let's lean into that.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Daryl.
Been an absolute pleasure. Love our conversation. I'm sure we'll go for the hat trick and get you back, in a year, 18 months' time, and with yet another funky shirt. But yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for your time.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the Purpose People podcast. How you can help us is to like and subscribe our YouTube channel. You can also subscribe to our podcasts on Apple, Spotify, Google and Amazon. That helps us get our message out there to help people go after their dreams, double down on it, and be successful in life on their terms.